see, I have two Bibles up here today, so I'm very serious about what I'm preaching today, actually. This is mine, and I decided to look at another one I had at home. But this one actually, I'll lay it right here. I have found a new understanding of what it means to be up here every Sunday. Once in a while you have to come up with a message and stand up here and once a month, once every 2 months, but when it comes down to having to do it every week, I have a new found respect for pastors and what they do. My dad's been a pastor for quite a while too, and I never, you think about it, but you don't really understand it until you're doing it. So I just wanted to say that, and if you can tell, I'm kind of growing a beard. I don't usually do this, and I hate hair on my face, but I told Brooke I'm doing it in protest of the furlough, so until they stop that, I'm gonna keep growing my beard. But anyway, if you happen to notice that, because I never grow facial hair. But anyway, the message this morning, it'll be out of 2 Corinthians, chapter 12, verses 7 through 10. And if there was a title, I don't always come up with a title, but it just seems to work for this one. The title would be Strength Through Suffering. And I know last week I preached on fear, and this may even go right along with what was preached last week, but for some reason God led me to this. I think it's pertinent for the time, because I think we all are suffering in one way or another. And I think too often that we think that because we're suffering, it's because of something we've done or we haven't done. It has to do with sin. And sometimes it is. Sometimes we do suffer because of sin. Sometimes we do suffer because we haven't done what we're supposed to do. But sometimes it's not about suffering from sin. It's suffering because that's where God wants us to be at that time. I'll make this a little clearer here in a second. But again, it's from 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 through 10. And least I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities and reproaches, in necessities and persecution, and distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Paul's talking to the Corinthians here, and he starts off by saying that he has a thorn in the flesh. Well, it doesn't really tell us what his thorn is. There are some commentaries that I've read that said it could have been malaria, epilepsy, or a disease of the eyes, and that there could have been many things that could cause the thorn in the flesh to Paul. But Paul wasn't saying that he was upset he had the thorn in the flesh. He wasn't being mad at God. He wasn't saying, God, why would you do this to me? Paul was actually saying that it was a good thing to have the thorn in his flesh. And the reason Paul was saying that was because Paul realized that sometimes we get a little ahead of ourselves. We think we don't need God anymore. Or we think that we're able to do everything on our own. And Paul was understanding that this thorn in his flesh was a buffet to him. To say that, hey, even though I'm Paul, people say how good I am. I know I'm not that good, because everything that I have, everything that I am is from God. And he understood that this thorn that he had was making him humble in God's eyes. We deal with a lot of things in our lives. We deal with sicknesses. We deal with those who leave us in this world. We deal with, let's be honest, if you're a Christian, you're going to serve God, you're going to have to deal with persecution. You're going to have to deal with suffering. It may not be from the flesh, but if you look around us, the ones that are getting attacked the most is Christians. The ones that you hear every day somebody saying something negative about, it's a Christian. And the reason that's happening is because This world is turning against God. And if you're a true Christian and you stand for God, and you stand for what you believe in, you're going to suffer. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Because this world will not exalt you. You are the thorn in the side of this world if you're a true Christian. Because you're telling them what they're doing is wrong. But Paul understood that he had to have setbacks in his life in order to show God's strength. He even asked God 3 times to take it from him. God didn't take it from him. The thing about it is our faith weakens sometimes. We all have problems with our faith. We have things that happen to us in our lives. We have things that take place. And our faith gets weak. Paul, as you can see, Paul didn't lack in faith. Paul was a strong man in God. And he asked God 3 times to take this from him, and God did not do so. You're not always not healed, and your suffering isn't always taken from you because you don't have the faith to believe that God can do it. Sometimes God wants us to be in that position. And why does he want us to suffer? Why would God want us to suffer? Because when we suffer, it weakens our human side, and it lets him come in and take over. Because sometimes we have a daily struggle between our human side and the side that we want to serve God. And sometimes we suffer to get us in that state that we have to be turned to God. Because we don't always do that. I make the mistake myself of saying, well, I don't know what else to do. I'm going to have to turn to God. The thing about it is, we should be turning to God 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It shouldn't be when we become weak. It shouldn't be when we get in that situation where we just don't know what else to do. It should be from the time, from morning till night, we should be praying constantly. God, give me strength, give me the ability to handle what I need to handle. Because sometime today, something may happen to me, and if I know that you're going to be there with me, that help me handle it. Excuse me. When we suffer, we can do one of 2 things. We can either become weak, we can become so forlorn and in despair that we think nothing can come good of this. Why God, oh why God, are you making me suffer like this? Or we can understand that even in our suffering, God's still with us. Paul, through his suffering, he gained the strength of character, humility, and an ability to empathize with others. Us as Christians, when we suffer, we can either sit there and moan and groan about it, be upset about it, ask God why, or we can understand that something is good to come of this. When we suffer, it doesn't mean that we're suffering just for us to suffer. We're suffering so that God's power can be shown through us. That others can see that even in our suffering, we know God's in control. That God will take care of us. Again, like I said, it doesn't always mean that God will take that suffering from us. And I don't have the answer for that. I don't know why some people tend to suffer all the time and some don't. I don't understand that. I don't understand why God answers prayers for one thing and heals somebody, and in another instance he doesn't. But the thing about it is, I don't need to understand it. That's God's will. It's not mine. My will would be everybody would feel better, would be healthy. But that's not my choice. That's God's will. God understands more than what we ever could fathom to understand in this world. And he knows that in order for us to become stronger in God, sometimes we need to suffer. Like I said before, when we suffer, I think it helps us understand what our limitations are. We're human beings. We don't have the ability to heal ourselves. We don't have the ability to do the things that we would need to do in order to get better. But the thing about it is, and I want to emphasize, suffering doesn't always mean a physical element. Suffering can be emotional. Suffering can be dealing with a lost loved one. Suffering can be dealing with something in your family. And the thing about it is no matter what suffering is, it shows us where our limits are. As human beings, we have limits. God has no limit on His power. And if we allow it, we can actually show God through our suffering. I look at it this way. And this is hard for me to look at it this way because as a human being, just a man, I don't understand why we suffer. I don't understand why certain people suffer more than others. But to me, suffering is almost a way of cleansing our pride. Because as humans, we tend to let pride get in the way of a lot of things. And when we suffer, it takes that pride away. We don't have the ability to be prideful when you're in a bad situation. When you're dealing with maybe not getting a paycheck the next week, if you're dealing with someone who is sick in a home and you don't always know what to do or how to take care of them. But the thing about it is, all that pride just slips away because you don't have the ability to be prideful when you're suffering something. And it can help us begin to heal, maybe not physically, but can help us begin to heal spiritually. It can help us to understand where our strength comes from, where our ability to do the things that we have to do as Christians comes from. Or we can go the other way, and we can forget God. We can forget who's there and who's always there for us. And when you suffer, that infection can grow, and it can grow, and it can grow, and you can completely get away from God, get away from what you need to be doing, get away from the hope and the that you have in God. The thing about it is, God didn't intend us to be weak, passive, or ineffective. And when we suffer, sometimes that's what happens with us. We become weak. We become ineffective in His service because we take our eyes off of God. There's two ways suffering can come to us. One, God could want it there because He knows that we're strong enough to handle it, that His strength and His power can come through us. We can suffer because we sin. Regardless of why you're suffering, if we turn to God, He can get us through anything. Whether it's because we've sinned, whether it's because He wants us to be in that situation, because He's got a message He needs to send to someone else. Maybe not to me. Maybe it's that person who lives down the street who doesn't know God. That maybe he walks by my house one day and he sees me outside and I'm really, just praising God and having a good time, and he goes, well, I thought somebody in your family was sick. But they are, but God can take care of it. That could plant a seed. It could plant a seed in that person's heart to go, well, he can deal with this, with God helping him, then maybe I need that. Maybe I need God in my life. Because everything we do as Christians, everything we do, someone else is watching us. It doesn't make a difference if it's that off word that you say when you get mad at something, or if it's that one time that you say instead of, Brooke's got a good thing, and I said this the other day, and the person I said it to just kind of took a step back, and I was wondering, even little things like that can touch someone's heart. Because everybody asks you, what's up today? Heaven. Just say heaven. And you see the look that you get. Some aren't so good, but that's okay. The thing about it is, it's planted something in that person's heart. The thing about it is, the most important thing I think from this is, I know that a lot of people are suffering right now with sicknesses and the things that are going on in the world. But I want to reiterate something. The longer this earth goes, the longer this world, God tarries and lets us stay in this world, the further it goes, the more suffering Christians are going to come under. And I know in my heart that when God comes back, Jesus comes back in the clouds, and I'm going home. But the thing about it is, while I'm here, as long as I tarry here, and as long as I speak God's word and talk about Jesus, more and more people are not going to like me. And I don't think it's because they have a necessarily hatred towards me. They just don't want to hear what we have to say anymore, because Satan is taking over this earth. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians are standing by and letting it happen. But the thing about it is, as long as you're serving God and you're in His Word and you're doing what you need to do, the longer we're here, the more Christians are going to suffer. We're going to come under more scrutiny. We're going to come under a situation where if you say something like, "What's up?" and you say heaven, you're going to get it. I mean, it may even become physical, because people don't want to hear that word from God. And why? Because we're telling them what they need to do to turn away from this world and turn to God, and the world is getting more hard-hearted. They don't want to hear it. That doesn't mean we need to stop. We need to keep saying. We need to keep telling people about God. We need to keep telling them what they need to do to turn their lives around. Because me personally, I don't want to see anyone go to hell, because it's real. It's not just a fairy tale. It's not just a story in a book. It's real. And we need to show people through our suffering that we have something greater than this world has. Because like I said last week, in the end, if you're a Christian, you're going to win. In the end, if you're not, you're going to the devil's hell. That's as simple as it is. And if you truly believe that, we need to take that suffering and take that ridicule and take those things that's going to happen to us and turn it into positives, turn it into, I may be suffering, but I know where I'm going. Do you know where you're going? I know I'm going to heaven. Do you? Do you know where you're going? And that hell place that we talk about isn't a joke. It's real. Again, like I said, I have a newfound respect for what pastors do, but I also see how God gives things to people. I tend to find messages in what I see. Other people may find messages in different ways. But I've seen fear and I've seen suffering, and God's led me to these passages that I've preached on. Next week it may be something completely different. He may be having me on the same thing, but the fact of the matter is, everything that we do needs to come from God. Whether it be me standing up here preaching, or you talking to someone about Jesus, or talking to someone about coming to church, God needs to be the forefront of it. We can't go on our own. That song will have invitation. If you take nothing else from today, just remember that we can be strong through our suffering. We don't have